saying men should be dangerous. By dangerous, that implies I should be ready to threaten someone, to hurt somebody.
No, you should be capable of it. There's nothing to you otherwise.
Welcome to the Dangerous Man Podcast, where we talk about how to become a better man, take responsibility for our mission, create value for others, and the many failures and lessons we've learned along the way. Stay dangerous. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Dangerous Man Podcast. This is your host, John Kostohris, and I'm joined here, of course, by co-host
Adam Thooft. What's up?
Good morning, good morning. And we're coming on air today with some cool things and stuff. We've been talking a lot about storytelling, Adam and I, and it's kind of come to my attention that there's this, if you've ever gotten up stage to talk or give a presentation or at school, if you've ever tried to teach something to anybody, perhaps even just have conversations and kind of tell stories and whatnot, there's this idea that, you might have noticed that sometimes it's hard to do that and you never really have all of your thoughts clarified together and it's just kind of a montage of blah, blah, blah. And sometimes, we've talked a lot about kind of some of the struggle busing of communication where people just tune out or they talk over you or you lose their attention, right? And these are some kind of common problems, and we've come across addressing it with there's how to ask better questions and how to tell better stories, the purpose of questions and good stories to hook people and keep them engaged and communicate your message. And kind of what I wanted to talk about today was that I've been learning about that we essentially have a name for how we would coordinate these how-tos, if you will, right, Adam?
Yeah.
If I were to ask how to climb Mount Everest in 10 steps. And step one would be first you should research Mount Everest and you should research climbers and you should research what it's like and step two is probably look at the gear you would need. And step three would be plan the flight out there and book your hotel. And step four would be find a guide. And maybe you should do that first, but in step, so on and so forth, start the mountain, climb, put the gear on, at this point, take your crampons out and your ice axe and you know what I mean? Get to this part of the mountain and then you're going to get to the base camp and you're going to acclimate into the elevation and the altitude. And then you're going to, at this day, you're going to, you know what I mean? There's there's this process to climbing Mount Everest. And the ultimate, if I were to doodle it out for our listeners, you'd have a little stick figure at the bottom of a hill or a mountain. And then you'd see this line progressively going up. And it would be step one, step two, step three, four, all the way up would be these hash marks that gradually go higher and higher up this line or this mountain. And then there's a big flag on top of the mountain and it's the desired result you want.
Which is getting to the summit of Mount Everest.
Exactly.
In this example.
Exactly, in this example. And so you could think of that as a process, but the word I want to introduce is framework. And essentially, there's kind of, let's just say that process, that step-by-step, that how-to, it is another word that would, wrap that up as a framework. So here's my, 10-step framework on how to climb Mount Everest successfully without getting hypothermia or losing a leg.
Yeah.
And that gives it a kind of a sexy hook too.
Yeah, kind of the traditional way that framework is used is in a house, all of the pillars and the beams and the crossbars and stuff that either in the foundation with the concrete if it's a larger building or the wood if it's a house, that's kind of the framework done so you kind of know what the house is going to look like before it's all fleshed out. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know about you, but I want to be able to, I guess he gives the example. This is Russell Brunson is the guy who he was given a particular training in one of his books called Expert Secrets, which I've referenced numerous times, but there's just so much little stuff in there. And today I want to kind of pick out some of that. and talk about it as I've been learning it, right? This is kind of my journey of learning communication and storytelling because I want to be a better, more charismatic leader. And I want to be able to communicate my message more clearly. And so if that's something that our audience resonates, our listeners, then definitely stick in on this one. But, essentially he tells his story. He says every framework needs to start, has 4 steps basically. And this is basically a framework for how to teach your frameworks.
A framework of frameworks.
It's exactly a world within a world within a world, a dream within a dream within a dream. And, but essentially step 1 is he says, tell the story of how you learned this framework, how you came to know this process, this how-to, or how you earned it. Perhaps that was like you, in this case, like I've learned this from Russell. And so like this would be a story of me telling how I acquired this framework, which I just did. I told a story of reading the book and watching some videos of him and seeing him essentially, go through, like, he went through years and years and years of his life to learn what frameworks were and really how to be more effective with them and how to really keep people's attention and so I'm going to go into, this is all confusing because it's a framework within a framework, but I'm actually going to talk about Russell's and his story and how he kind of came to know that step 1 should be that I should tell a story of how I learned this or earned this. And essentially it was like he learned all this stuff about marketing and sales and websites and blah, 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 and technical stuff. And he, over like 10 years, and he had started to kind of get up and make his way into like different business seminars and marketing seminars in front of like, a group of people would pay to be at this event, and then different speakers would give their presentations, right? And so Russell was up there presenting about all these things. And like to him, these things he's learned is processes of how to like successfully, market or build websites or like, build a following of people or just, all these things that he had learned. He had developed his own little step processes and frameworks and then those were the things he wanted to teach people. Those were the strategy pieces. Those were like the how-to, the tactical, tactics basically being like me, how-to, and strategy being like, well, the what, if we're talking like, who, what, where, how, why, or, kind of a thing. But not to lose you real quick, but I want to move on with the story. But he essentially says like, he was so passionate about this and it was like everything to him. And he spent so much time. And at one point, like, he's just noticing people are like zoning out or hardly listening. They're not looking at him. They seem bored. Some people are falling asleep in their chairs. One dude like gets up and walks out of a seminar. And this happened a bunch of times at different seminars. And finally, he just slams his hand down and he's just so furious. And he's like, in his words, he said, and the angry Russell came out. And he says, guys, do you not understand how hard I've worked to get this for you so that I could teach it to you? He's like, do you not know the amount of he just goes on and on. He's like, all of the courses that I've gone through, every course on this topic, on personal development, on, every single course that I could possibly find on online marketing. Like I've bought them all and I've gone through them and I've studied and I've applied them to like 4 or 5 different businesses that I've created. And I've seen this result and I've done this and that over the last 10 years. And he's just like going on a bit of a rant and then he's like kind of startled himself because after he does that, he looks and everyone's like very clearly like alert, awake and paid attention and sucked into what he has to say. And he's like, do you want to learn this even? And they're all going, nodding their heads. He's like, all right, then get your notebooks out.
Now.
And he's like, get your notebooks out and take notes because this is important. And they're like, and they get the notebooks out. And then he does the rest of what he was already doing, probably a little bit more fired up now, but like he does it. And they all are like vigorously taking notes. And like, and then they come up to him and they're like, wow, this was so valuable. And like, and what he realized was if you don't actually communicate to your audience the importance of what you have and how you either all of the work that you went through to learn this or to have earned it or kind of figured it out yourself. Yeah. Like, like I climbed, like one of my favorite hikers that I've followed and learned a lot about hiking, right, Adam? Yeah. He, his earned it story was that, I guess it's a learn and earn kind of a combo, but like he had done, the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 3,000 plus mile hiking trail from Mexico to Canada on the West Coast. And it took him like, 4 to 6 months to hike this whole thing in one go without getting off trail. Like 4 to 6 months straight of being out in the wilderness hiking. And he did the Appalachian Trail, which is the Appalachian Mountains, which is a similar distance on the East Coast. And he had also done the Continental Divide, which is right down the middle of the Rockies. Same thing, Mexico to Canada, pretty much in most of these scenarios. But he had done these, it's called the Triple Crown, when you hike all three successfully. And he had done these all. And so him being able to explain that as like, hey, I know that this gear works great for this. And I know that like having a lighter backpack as opposed to these bigger, heavier backpacks, because I've just noticed when I did a heavy backpack, when I did the Appalachian Trail, like blah, 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 blah. And he was like, how hard it was. And he's like, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm willing to shut up and listen and actually believe that you have value because I see the case study of your life. You know what I mean? I see what you went through to get this. And he says, people just respect you more when you actually start whatever you're talking about by really, you almost kind of like, I don't want to use the word like sell, but like you almost kind of sell them on the fact that this is important and there's a lot of value you have to give.
Well, I think
that they should care, basically. Sell that they should even care.
Yeah. And I think the question that a lot of people ask themselves when they're getting information from people is like, why can't I just go get this information myself elsewhere?
Right.
Like, where's the value in getting it from you specifically? And I think that's kind of what it comes down to is like, I've either learned this or earned this in a way that it would take you a lot more time to understand this than how I'm teaching it to you. So then there's a lot of value in what I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think.
And if you don't like pre-frame that, then you don't really they don't really understand that sometimes.
Right. But there's this concept that Alex Hormozy talks about. And if you, one of his books called $100 Million Offers, it's got like, I don't know, tens of thousands of 5-star reviews in the business world, entrepreneur world, just fantastic book. And the guy's done a lot of stuff. He's built like several $100 million plus businesses over the last 10 years. Like the guy's just he's really put the work in to become a genius in the business world. But one thing that he talks about is what we were saying pre-framing, and Alex.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember what I said. It slipped my mind.
Oh, Russell Brunson talking about how you have to earn or learn a framework.
Oh, yeah. And the reason that's important is because, people might, in the case of Russell, and I know how this ties back to Alex, but in the case of Russell, they didn't understand the value he had to give them. They had no idea how valuable this was or what it took to get it. And so the way that Alex has described this is there's actually, if people don't perceive the value you have, it's not worth the value of what it actually is not worth it much to them. But if they perceive how valuable it is or how important or how it can help them, all of a sudden the value goes up. It's like this mathematical equation, which I won't get into, but that key element is he calls it perceived likelihood of achievement. Or he'll shorten it and say like perceived value. Like I perceive. So part of it is just like I have to actually, when you give up and give a talk or a TED talk or a presentation or something, like I actually have to increase the level of belief and level of faith and the level of perceived value that my audience perceives in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it will make everything I say after infinitely more valuable.
Yeah.
And Russell refers to this as a pre-frame, which, I mean, the reason we're talking about just this first step so long is because I actually think it's been one of the biggest keys to my communication, and a lot of people don't do this, and I just have a hard time paying attention to even what they say or even caring what they have to say.
Because it's like, are you just kind of pulling this out of your ass, or?
Yeah, it's like they're like, "Are you an expert? Like you're my age, like you know what I mean?" Like sometimes it's just kind of funny how like, and so some people are like, "John, you give so much context," and I'm like, "Yeah, because you have no idea what I'm saying otherwise or why it matters, and you don't perceive value in it." So what I found was people never listened to me. They actually never cared. They would tune me out. And when I started giving like a little bit of an explanation of like the person I learned it from and giving them credibility or edifying them, and, I basically had to qualify it that this was important and that you should even care to listen. And then everything I said, they were like, wow, yeah, like they cared to listen, and they actually believed it was going to be good. And so somebody, I'm trying to remember who this was, but they said, I think this was Eileen Wilder, who she runs a business basically helping coach people on how to do public speaking. And one thing she would say when she's on stage was, like, everybody, they want you to do really well. Like when you get on stage, like everybody in the audience, they're not thinking, oh, this guy's going to suck, or I hate this guy, or like, blah, blah, blah. It's like everybody actually, they desire to be entertained. They desire to to learn really good stuff. They want it to be like engaging. And so they actually are there, like you have a few seconds to capture their attention and kind of prove it to them that this is going to be that.
Yeah.
And they're not like, oh, no, it's not. Like if you do that well, if you come out funny and you give them a hook and you engage them, like, and you pre-frame it well and you show them the value of like how you earned or learned this, they're like, oh yeah, good. Okay. I was hoping it would be, and now I'm sure it is. And so I really believe this is going to be good now. Well, guess what? Like if you didn't pre-frame it well or explain how you learned or earned something, and then you launch into a story, or you launch into, whatever, you launch into your teaching, people are sitting there like, yeah, but that probably doesn't work. Or they're like, yeah, but that probably, like, who are you to talk about that? Or, that wasn't, this guy's kind of weird. But you know what I mean? They just start they view you through a different lens.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand, or they don't know you, or they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, instead of viewing it through like belief, they view it through skepticism.
Yeah.
And it's essentially the impression you gave or how you pre-framed everything you did after that was just, and so that's the value of a pre-frame in any communication. And we can kind of get into that. But
I mean, I remember going to a business conference and people would like introduce the next person who was talking or whatnot. And everyone would be like clapping and stuff because they're like, oh, we're excited for this person. And I'm like, I'm clapping for him. I don't even know who this person is. But like, it's kind of like the thing where it's like everyone's clapping in the room for the next speaker. So it's just kind of like a courtesy thing. It's like,
right.
But then also you're kind of hoping, hey, this next speaker could be like the best speaker I've ever heard in my life. I just don't know who they are yet. So it's like, this could be the talk that like changes everything for me, but I just don't know it yet.
Yeah. And if somebody, here's what's crazy is like, if somebody got up that you did know, Adam.
Yeah.
Let's give it an example. Like, I was at a conference and I did not know this person I was going to give the keynote talk for that day, but the MC or the person that you kind of are more familiar with in the conference, right?
Yeah.
Or in this case, I actually even knew this guy, comes up and he basically says like, let me introduce this guy real quick. This is some of what he's done. Like, this is such a great person. This is why I respect him. And like, we're just so happy that he's been able to like, spend time really like applying this to his life. And now he wants to come and share with us. Yeah. And then he hands the mic off, give it up for, well, all of a sudden you're like, in your scenario, you're probably like, oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like this could be the lights out talk I was waiting for. Like, or at least I know this guy now and I care about his message because I know him.
Yeah.
Because somebody I knew passed that, like the baton on, like if in Olympics running relays, they pass the torch. Yeah. Like, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to kind of add some value there.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's almost like the MC in that situation is like almost doing the pre-frame of who that person is.
Exactly.
But then I think they also probably are going to do a little bit themselves. Like I think comedians do this a lot when they like walk out. And usually the main thing that they try to do is just become instantly like kind of relatable.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like all of you. And they do that a lot of the time. If you like watch comedians, they come out and be like, how y'all doing tonight? That's like the classic line.
Yeah.
And then someone will be like, good, or something like you got, or they may not get a response. It's like, y'all doing good? Well, I'm doing good. Let's, and then they probably just go into a joke or something. But it's like like basically they just made, hey, we're chill here, we're having a good time. I'm not here to like I have arrived. It's, and that's the thing that makes people like relax and chill kind of thing, because it's like, so it like tunes them very simply.
Interacts with them, but
Yeah.
in a way that's just kind of natural.
Yeah,
and-
I think it in a way gets them kind of a little bit more relaxed, so they're ready to like receive jokes and laugh at them, rather than I must study what this guy is saying. If it was like someone giving a talk on actual content rather than just trying to make you laugh.
Yeah. Dang. It's actually, now that you tell that story, Adam, I actually really realized that that's true of like a lot of times we are kind of like, it's more when we have more belief and faith and we're excited to hear what someone says and we believe it's going to be good. I'd say we're a lot more relaxed, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes when somebody new gets up, you're like, you have to put a lot of brain work in just to like kind of be psychoanalyzing them if you should trust them or not.
Yeah.
And then, but when you preframe something well, or you tell, in this case, you tell a story of how you learned or earned something, during that process, the person's they're put at ease that they can trust you and that they're excited that they can, like, it's almost like, oh, I don't know if I want to like give you my attention and my energy, because if it ends up sucking, like I just drained and wasted that and like wasted my time, and like people value their time, and you know, it's like, oh, I could be getting entertained somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if you put them at ease by kind of explaining to them why they should care and listen and pay attention, they're gonna be relaxed knowing that they're like, oh, okay, for the next hour you talking, I can give you my full attention and believe that this is gonna be worth my time.
Yeah.
And it just puts, I like the word to use, they relaxes them a lot.
Yeah.
So the same thing with the comedian who comes out, relates to them, and like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. And they're like, ah, okay. It relaxes them, and you know, it's just
But also it's brilliant that comedians do that, because it gets them ready to laugh in a lot of ways. I get this from like just watching a bunch of comedians, but also when I was doing ministry, one of the guys on my team actually did stand-up comedy at a bunch of churches when he was like 18 actually. So he did like opening stuff a lot of the time. So he's kind of been through it. So it's like, guys, these are things that work and these are things that don't.
So you're kind of picking some nuggets up from your friend.
So I picked some nuggets up from him on that stuff. So it was really good to like kind of pick up those little things of like this. Okay, just opening to become relatable. Or now that we using Russell Brunson's kind of things, you have to pre-frame it.
Yeah, it's amazing how many uses you can like, or how many different mediums, right? So like different things or people or avenues that you could pre-frame something. It's kind of like you could click on an ad and the words on the ad or the video in the ad pre-frame, you know, what you know this to be or kind of how you feel about it before you click on a website, right? That's something I do a lot with. But maybe it's you start conversation with somebody and you're like, oh yeah, that reminds me of something, and you're like, now you don't give like necessarily a ton of backstory. You kind of give backstory, but like it can't be boring backstory. Let me tell you of a time when I was fishing, and then, you know, it's just like something random. Like it's gonna be like, I'm trying to think of like, so it could be a conversation just like, before I actually launch into everything I'm going to tell you, let me just quickly just tell you why this, you know, how I figured this out. Or I don't know. It's just a little explanation.
This reminds me of the time that
almost a little summary,
like,
a little overview kind of.
Yeah. Like I remember, also while doing ministry, one of the women that I worked with did have a lot of these stories, and I think she'd always like pre-frame them as well. She'd be like, oh, this reminds me of the time that I got accused of stealing shoes from the Holocaust Museum. And we're like, what?
Right. That alone just gets you ready to like hear what she has to say.
Yeah. We're like, huh?
Oh, that's really good. That's funny. And I just think there's a lot of value for it. And if you launch into talking about ideas, or if you launch into teaching, if you launch into whatever, you know what I mean? Like sharing in a small group setting, like if you launch into a talk and you just start giving practicals, but you haven't established a credibility, you're not going to command the respect of your audience. And so, yeah, that's the value of the pre-frame. But we'll kind of drip the next couple steps. It's a kind of a 4-step process to giving a good framework of, and the first step is to explain the story of how you learned or earned it. And so that's what we got time for today, but stay tuned. And I guess on Sunday, we'll drip you the next, or Monday it is, today's Saturday. We'll drip the next bit in the series here. We'll have to keep you on the edge of your seat for this one. So sorry about that, but that's just how it goes. So, and it's going to be better for it. But yeah, so, just, I guess, Adam, like, what would it look like if people started to actually use a pre-frame or tell a little bit of a story of the value, how they earned something? Imagine if all of us men and leaders started to take this little hack and incorporate it. Like, what would it look like in our communication? What would it look like for our ability to inspire people and to connect with people and to have a whole room of people respect you and be ready and hungry to listen to you? And so, share this podcast with a friend to help other men embrace danger and become great. And you've been listening to the Dangerous Man podcast. Join us next time. Until then,
claim your greatness
and stay dangerous.